This is episode 16 of Objectively Biased. What is going on, everybody? This is Wilder Adams alongside John Tortorelli and River Brown. And today we're talking about the New York Knicks, who are coming off of pretty bad losses against fellow contenders, the Boston Celtics, Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Golden State Warriors. River's pretty happy today with the way Steph and Butler are playing, so we're going to cover them. And talk about the Nuggets-Lakers, because the Lakers dominated Denver. Luka looks good. Starting to synergize, maybe? How does that affect the Western Conference? And we're going to give a little rookie report at the end with some of the big names among this rookie class, which is pretty minimal right now, but we'll get into that later. So, guys, how are you doing?
John, I know you're in the mud right now. I gotta feel bad for Knicks fans, man. Getting beat by 40 in Cleveland and then heading to Boston to get beat by 20. That's a brutal week. I'll be honest. I expected, maybe some semblance of some fight back, but we'll talk about that in a few. But feeling good. Golden State right now is up a good amount against Dallas, so I can feel good that they're not gonna blow the lead. Because now today NBA, you can be up 20 and it go bad real fast. And I'm just excited to talk Maul, man. I'm excited that we're nearing close to the playoffs, and I think that's the most exciting part for me. And March Madness is about to start, so it's just about to be peak hoops for right now.
Yeah, it's one of those exciting times of the basketball calendar where you have everything going for you. Last night, that wasn't really the case, but I will say that I'm happy to be here today. I got my audio levels fixed. Last week, they were off. Today, they're good. I've got some good energy coming to today's show, and I'm pretty excited to have you here today, Riv. Happy Black History Month. I mean, today's going to be a great show. We got a lot of good topics.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that.
Of course.
My audio is always a mess, but like Riv said, I mean, the All-Star break, we're coming back, and we're kind of running toward the finish line of the regular season and seeing how some of these teams really put it together. We're seeing a bloodbath in the Western Conference from seeds, honestly 1 to 11 right now, because it's starting to get some separation at the bottom with some news with like what's happening with Victor Wembanyama, his injury, his blood clot, that'll take him out for the year. In the Eastern Conference, outside of the top like 6 or 7, it's pretty brutal. So we know where the teams stand now, and it's going to be pretty interesting. And starting with one of the bigger teams in these conversations, the New York Knicks. Like I said, they come off of a massive loss against the Cleveland Cavaliers, and then they follow that up with another brutal game against the Boston Celtics. So the question really starts, is New York actually, do they have any chance of contending? Riv, let's start with you.
They're in a brutal spot right now, and I say that because all confidence is shot right now. They have to find it within themselves to get that ability to kind of perform right now. You've lost 2 games against Cleveland. The first game earlier in the year, it was a really good game, actually. That game really came down to the wire. And then, of course, Darius Garland came to bless, and he was really clutch for them late in that game. You go up against Boston 3 times, and I think you've had the lead. I saw this stat. You've had the lead for a combined 50 seconds in all 3 games combined. That is truly a statistic I haven't heard in some time now, probably never in my life. Excuse me, but that is a statistic nonetheless. Then you head up against Cleveland one more time, and you feel like the energy should change, the energy should shift, and they beat you by 40 points in Cleveland. I mean, it was an ass whooping. Cleveland was able to do whatever they want in the pick and roll, and Darius Garland didn't even play that well. That was one of his few bad games, and they still, DeAndre Hunter, Max Strus, I mean, Ty Jerome, this team from top to bottom, the continuity, the depth that they have were able to just exploit and hound the New York Knicks. And then, of course, Evan Mobley was amazing. Now you had the Boston, which is a Sunday showcase, primetime game. Everybody's watching, and you lay another dud. I think the problems with New York stem from, of course, the obvious answers of Cat playing the 5 and defensively them not being as locked in as you want them to be on the perimeter, them constantly switching, them getting beat off the dribble, and pretty terrible rotations. And, yeah, I look at it and, I'm looking at Cat. Cat's obviously a problem. But at the same time, these guys easily give up on the perimeter with just letting them switch. There is no, multiple doubles. I don't see guys fighting over screens. We saw OG a little bit fighting over those screens, getting down and grinding dirty. But this defensive team, Tom Thibodeau is elite at his defensive schemes. He has been one of the better defensive coaches in our time in the Basketball Association. And this year, they just haven't been that. And I know this New York team, this fandom is preying on Mitch Robinson to come back, but he's not God. He's not this working miracle. This man has not played over 50 games in 2 seasons. I think John threw me the stat. I forgot the exact number. I'm
He's
sure
played
he'll look it up.
31 games the last 2 years.
Here we go. John, I thank you. Love you to death. He's played 31 games in the past 2 seasons. That's not somebody you can just wake up and think he's going to be here or be healthy. You have to kind of, understand that he might not be available for you guys. So now you have to look within the margins. You have to start looking at other options. And New York is in this tough position because Cleveland and Boston look like the cream of the crop in the East right now. They're both sitting pretty at 40-plus wins, the number 1 and the number 2 seeds comfortably, and they've been dominant all year. Cleveland, more or less, has been dominant all year, every week. Boston's had his hiccups, but for the most part, it's been there. New York, your record against 500 teams in general isn't the best. And on top of that, against the top 2 teams in the East, you haven't won a game yet. I fear for this team because defensively, teams like Indiana can give you some fits on offense. Teams like Milwaukee can give you some fits. You're not a shoo-in to just dominate Detroit. I think you win that series, but that could be a drug-it-out, dragged-on series. And now you're looking at a second-round matchup potentially against Boston in which you have no chance of winning. I do give Brunson some grace. I think he's an elite player. I think he's a guy that can tilt a playoff series, but that's a tough matchup. And I think for all intents and purposes, New York is sitting in a pretty tough position where in the same week you've got blitzed by Cleveland and Boston, and there is no reinforcements that's coming for this team.
Listen, the New York Knicks spent 5 first-round picks this summer and mortgaged half their identity and half of their young core to compete with the Boston Celtics. And to be a top-end contender that could go to the finals, not just a team that is making the playoffs and winning a playoff series, a team that could bring a championship and really restore that gravitas in New York City. Despite adding Karl-Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges, and OG Anunoby, this year they're 0-7 versus the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Celtics, and the Cavaliers. And it's not just the fact they're losing all of these games, it's how uncompetitive each and every single one of them have been. And the 3 games they played versus Celtics, they lost by 23. They lost by 27, despite them not having Kristaps and Drew Holiday in the second matchup. And today they found themselves down by 20 points by the second quarter. And despite a late third quarter surge by Cat and Brunson, Tibbs sits JB to start the fourth quarter, and the Knicks end up losing by 15 again today as well. They're 11-14 versus teams above 500. And we have never seen a healthy Tom Thibodeau team in the playoffs. In 2021, Mitchell Robinson did not play. 2023, Julius Randle was out. Last year, half the lineup was injured. And now I wouldn't blame the majority of those injuries on Tibbs for overrunning his players and playing them too much. But even a guy like Josh Hart, who did get hurt, is something where I look at Tibbs playing him more than almost any other player in the NBA. And with how hard some of these guys play, it's clear that the Knicks don't have a championship formula. But on top of that, this team doesn't have any margin for error. If one of Brunson or Cat, of course, get hurt, but even Josh Hart, this team can get knocked down in the first round if they play a team like the Bucks. And we've talked about the Knicks for a long time because they have an elite offense. Brunson's an unguardable playoff performer, but everything else here is falling apart like a stack. It's a stack of cards that doesn't translate well to the postseason. Karl-Anthony Towns is meant to be a 4 in the playoffs. We saw that last year. And if Mitchell Robinson has been out the entirety of the last calendar year, you look at Cat having to be a full-time rim protector where he often gets put into foul trouble. And in games like today, Cat cannot get any offense going when you have a small like Drew Holiday matched up on him and really sizing him up in the post and completely stifling him. And I look at this team's bench. Today they're running Landry Shamet because they're still down guys. They don't have rim protection. The perimeter defense is good, but we're seeing clearly they don't have enough on the end of the floor because they're a bottom 10 defense right now. And along with the inconsistency, along with their stars not showing up in these high-stakes games, I'm not convinced Tom Thibodeau is the coach that's going to deliver the Knicks a championship anytime soon because this is the same coach who's been set in his ways for a long time. And I don't think he has ever really had the playoffs as his focus. He's always been a high-level floor raiser in the regular season, and that's often come back to bite the Knicks. So when we talk about this team, they're a major disappointment because they've turned around so drastically the last 3 years, and they've added so much and they've made so many big moves, and yet they're a worse team than they were last year.
There's a lot to get into. And I think the first way I want to pursue this conversation, John, you made a point about Tom Thibodeau being stuck in his ways. I think we saw that with around 4 minutes left in the game. Karl Anthony Towns drives to the rim, starting to limp, and he starts to kind of lay on the bench and go to the locker room. And obviously with Karl Anthony Towns, there's always a fear of a major lower body injury with him. And then 2 minutes later, after that relatively dramatic scene of events, he comes back on the floor and he's still limping on the court. And the game was an 18-point game at that point. It was over, yet you have your star with a ton of mileage, with a lower body injury history, who just got hurt on the floor, clearly displaying his injury. That's a big problem with the Knicks. And I think that was really important to highlight, because I want to transition just back to the entire scheme of the team. And I'm not disappointed, because we should have seen this coming with the New York Knicks. This New York Knicks team is the definition of a tier 2 basketball team. They can dominate any of the first 25 teams in the NBA, but then once you get to the top 3-4 teams in the NBA and you're playing the Thunder, the Cavs, etc., the Celtics, those teams can match up with you and actually be better than you in terms of front court length, size, versatility, and overall defensive discipline. And if anybody's watched Karl Anthony Towns for 10 years, ding, 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 I know Karl Anthony Towns like a book. He is an incredible offensive player in 90% of matchups. You see a Nikola Vucevic, he's going to drop 34 and 18. Not quick enough for Cat, and he's not, right? He can't stay in front of him and Cat's floor spacing. But then you play a team like the Celtics, Karl Anthony Towns, he can be matched with length, with strength, and it throws him off. It's always thrown him off. And the Knicks went all in the last 2 years on Mikal Bridges, Karl Anthony Towns. It was just a very bad management of assets. And now this team is forever going to be limited because their two best players are the limited ones. Jalen Brunson, as dynamic as he is, he's always just going to be a decently athletic 6'2" guy. That's never changing. He's never going to have elite length. Karl Anthony Towns is probably always going to have issues with the Cavs, with the Celtics, just with the way he plays the NBA game. He struggles when he can't use his quickness as a strength, and when he has to adapt, he gets erratic. And that's talking about offense. That's not even talking about defense, where the Knicks are 24th in the NBA. Mikal Bridges doesn't look great. Karl Anthony Towns, we know his limitations there, and those type of teams can exploit them. When your two best players are exploitable on defense and they have clear physical limitations, you're not going to win a championship that way. And when your role players can't defend and make up for those weaknesses, which Mikal Bridges hasn't done at all this year, this is who they are. They're a good team that's going to dominate the first 23, 24 teams in the NBA. That's why they're the third seed, but they're going to lose to the truly elite teams. They're the definition of a tier 2 team.
Yeah, I mean, you said a lot of good things. And even going prior to Minnesota, Tom Thibodeau's in Chicago. I mean, he was running Luol Deng to the ground. This dude was leading the league in minutes. He had Derrick Rose in a game where they were up 14 with 3 minutes left in the playoff game. He shouldn't have been in. I mean, this is what he does. This is his philosophy. He trusts the guys he trusts is who the guys he's going to play. And he has a very tough leash. And he's the guy who, if you make one mistake, he pulls you. He pulls you. He's not a guy who's, you have to gain a lot of trust with Thibodeau. And that's not to say he's not a bad coach. He's just a stubborn one. And I do think New York sending 5 first-round picks from Mikal, I think that was a tough pill. Giving OG a shit ton of money, and he's still, he's also a guy with injury history. That was a tough pill. Trading for Cat, I think it's not a terrible idea, but you don't have the proper guy next to him to kind of maximize him, because I think that guy was Rudy Gobert, who at the 5 can do what he does, and Cat can play the 4. Offensively, what Cat has brought to this team, you love everything about it because he is maximizing his offensive prowess. And this offense in New York has been an elite offense all year. Mm-hmm. But when you play an elite team like Boston, who defensively knows what they want to do, defensively can give you fits, this is the type of things that happen. When you play an elite defense like Cleveland, this is what they do. They box you up, and now you're in games where you're not even close. So I think New York, the goal was to go all in. The goal was to be competitive, and you have some soul searching this year, and you need a run. in this playoffs because you're going to be with these 4 to 5 guys for the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's kind of the heartbreaking thing if you're a Knicks fan, because this is the best team that they've had in our lifetimes, and yet they're not even close. You can say, well, they're young, they're developing, maybe they need to gain some more chemistry. And yeah, but at the end of the day, when you invest all that you did in Mikal Bridges and you get this output in games like tonight, you realize that the theory of Mikal has always been better than the reality. And this high level scoring option and super versatile defensive player of the year caliber wing, you're not going to get those two things combined on a night to night basis. And I think you put it best, James. Their two best players are extremely gifted. You won't find me saying a negative thing about Jalen Brunson because I believe he's a top 10 player in the world. And Karl Anthony Towns, in any given matchup, can give you 50 and 15 rebounds, and he's the best three-point shooting big we've ever seen. But even with those innate strengths that they have, they come with really unique, and I wouldn't really put this on JB defensively. I mean, today he was guarding Porzingis and holding his own on face-ups, which is insane. Porzingis is a full foot taller than him.
And a half.
But in Cat's case, it really shows the impact of having that high-level rim protector. That's why I'm a humongous Bam Adebayo or a Draymond Green fan, because those are the guys who give you that foundation for a star like Brunson to bring you to a NBA Finals appearance. But with those really unique weaknesses Cat has, he's best as a 4. And that's where he's going to be held back, because you want him going up against 5s on the offensive end, and then you want him playing on against 4s on the defensive end. And finding the best of those both worlds is really hard to come by when you basically chose to have Mitchell Robinson over Isaiah Hartenstein. This is a team that signed Hart 2 years ago, and his limited playing time, he was the better player, and he was younger, and he was a lot more reliable. And by the Knicks not being proactive in moving Mitchell Robinson sooner, I mean, he's played 60 games one season since 2020. They lost that one stalwart on the defensive end, and he gets paid a ton of money, almost $30 million a year, $30 million in fact by Oklahoma City, and it's been worth it because he's the one who adds that extra layer. So it's really disappointing, I think, if you're a Knicks fan. You can find a silver lining that we're going to be good, but if you held on to those assets a little bit longer and waited for a better move, and I'm really talking about Mikal, number 1, and then a little bit of Cat as well, but I'm not going to be as critical. I mean, you moved Julius Randle and Dante. I think they lost a little bit of the chemistry there with those two guys, but I would have made the Cat move. The Mikal Bridges trade to me is one that I was intrigued by. I'm like, this is pretty cool at the time. But when you sit back and look at it from a really a further point of view, you realize it's one of the worst trades in recent NBA history, because that was their version of all in move, and it made the team worse.
The problem with the Karl Anthony Towns trade wasn't the Cat trade on the surface. It was comparing what they had like 14 months ago to what they had today. They had, 8-9 first-round picks to trade. RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo. All of these assets they can flip. And it turns into OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Karl Anthony Towns. All of them are very good players in their own way. But when you have those type of assets, you get those assets, so it's, okay, let's win a title. Let's go all in for a title. And the problem with that those set of trades was, is this getting the job done? No one's denying it's going to be a good team, but the management of assets was just completely off. The Knicks lucked in to Julius Randle in free agency, Jalen Brunson in free agency. Those are free assets that they were able to build around and get all of those assets. Mm-hmm. And then they convert all of that luck into a really good team that's not great. And because they're two stars, while they're super good and there's very few players with a significant flaw, now you have two stars who can get targeted on one side of it. And on the other end of it, the supporting cast that you overpaid for financially and draft capital-wise, it's not enough. And then you let a top 12 center in the league go because you trust the guy who's hurt all the time. Yeah, I get the CBA stuff and how much Hartenstein got signed for, but it was just bad management or asset management. You can't put it any other way.
Remember in the CBA messed them up because they couldn't sign Hartenstein for what OKC was going to give them, which was unfair, obviously, but it really put them in a tough position. And Hartenstein talked about it. He was like, he would have stayed, but that money OKC gave him, man. Yeah, that was game changing. And I was like, damn, like only a few teams could give him that bread. It was unfortunate because Isaiah Hartenstein really embodied New York and he really wanted to stay.
Yeah.
But that money, you can't give that money up.
But then the Robinson money and then the OG Anunoby money. I mean, that's where it kind of gets crazy, right? You trade RJ and Emmanuel quickly, who are honestly like two really good complementary young players for OG, which by itself isn't great asset management because I think OG's better than both of them, but not better than both of them combined, in my opinion. And then the draft, and then you give him that money, and then you already like it just didn't feel like good asset management once again. Maybe you can get off of Mitchell Robinson somehow to bring back Hartenstein. Not sure how the cap space works in that scenario, but there's just a lot of layers to what just doesn't feel like enough. Just feels like it's really good, but not great. Kind of like those Pacers teams in the 90s. You're really good, but you're really good. That's all I can give you.
Hey, they made the finals eventually.
That's true.
I will say on the OG front, they consolidated off iHeart because they didn't want to pay him to be the sixth man behind Brunson. I felt that was good asset management, but because of how versatile and how like helpful a player OG Anunoby is, you had to pay him that going rate for high level two-way wings. That's $40+ million for a guy like him. So I don't think it was bad asset management as much as it was. You do have to overpay to keep a guy like him.
I don't think nobody was giving him $40 million on the market.
$40 million is crazy for OG still. I don't care.
You don't think Detroit would have given him $40 million? They give Tobias Harris 25.
That's why you don't trade RJ and IQ for a guy on a one-year deal.
John, that's a fair point because Detroit does do some wild shit. So I you know what?
Fair.
You don't think Charlotte would have offered him 35?
Charlotte,
maybe not 40.
Charlotte, that trade was an overpay.
Let me rephrase. I don't think a competent organization
off the Harrod contract, I think,
would pay $40 million to OG.
Not every organization's competent.
Let me add, I think even Detroit, I think they'd have gave maybe 32, 33. They gave Tobias 25. Yeah, that does sound a little crazy, but
the Knicks were convinced that somebody would have given him $40 million. That's why they gave it to him. But that's why I'm kind of going back to that point. You traded two young players on long-term deals for a one-year guy who you overpaid, and now you lose Hartenstein out of it. I still don't think that's good asset management. I don't even think I would have done the RJ IQ deal, even looking back at it. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it's going to be very interesting because this is the core they locked into. This is it. And Cat's one of those weird players. When you trade a lot for him, you're probably not going to trade for nearly as much if you wanted to deal him again. And I think that goes the same for Bridges. I think that goes the same for OG. So the most asset literate thing you could do is just have them on the team and see if it works out. But we've seen it against the best teams in the league. They're really good, but there's just a different class of high-end talent and teams with just they can exploit the Knicks if you have superior size and length. The Knicks are longer than 24 teams in the NBA, but the final six, no. Riz facial expressions are something right now.
They are longer than okay.
Reading between the lines, and I'm not making any comments.
I get it. I get it. You don't got to tell me, man.
All right. Is there anything you guys want to talk about with the Knicks before we transition?
No, I think we really ripped into them a little bit.
What?
We harped on their issues.
Wilder's talking about they're one of the longest in the team. John telling us we ripped into them. I get it, man. I get it. It's a freakazoid thing we got going on. But yep. Definitely got into them for sure. Listen, New York got a long way to go, man. They got 20 games, 15, 20 games to figure it out. They're probably going to be a 3 seed for the most part. So they'll either play Milwaukee or Indiana or Detroit. So good luck and get ready.
All of those teams could beat them in a series, by the way. I wouldn't bet on it, but if you told me Indiana,
I'd bet on Milwaukee.
Those 3 teams I missed that.
Those 3 teams could
Milwaukee,
beat New York in a series.
Indiana, Detroit. Those are teams that could potentially.
Detroit. I'm not going that far. I think that's a little bit crazy.
Respect us.
I think Detroit would be a long shot, but
I mean, your second best player is Malik Beasley.
Hey, our second best player is Cade Cunningham.
Who's better than Cade Cunningham on the fifth?
Cade Cunningham. That's our first, second, third best player right there. Cade Cunningham.
In fairness, Is there a world Kid Cunningham is the best player in that series? I think there is.
Yeah,
That's a lot on him. But yeah,
it is.
I could see it going up against OG, and then you got Mikal, Josh Hart, Deuce.
They have a
Kid this year
star.
play in the same tier as Brunson. It's just a matter of experience at that point because Brunson's been in the postseason now for 4+ years.
Yeah. It's a long shot. I'm still not saying the Knicks have no chance or the Pistons have no chance. I would take the Knicks comfortably that series, but Milwaukee, Indiana, that's like 60-40, 50-50 in my opinion. I think the Bucks would win that series, and I think that Indiana would have a chance. And I mean, look, Indiana won last year, even though the Knicks were hurt. So let's talk about the Golden State Warriors now, because I don't know where they are in the game, but they were
We
killing
won.
it.
The game's
They won.
over. We
Game's
won.
over.
24. Warriors. 4-1 in our last 5, baby. What's your question, brother? Because I know you've done some hating on my boy. No, I'm just playing.
How far can the Warriors take it in the Western Conference this year, Riv? I'll let you start this one too.
I didn't think you were gonna. I just used to say, how far can the Warriors take it? That was gonna kill me.
I was careful.
That was gonna kill me if you didn't finish that sentence. Listen, man, the West is tough. They just beat Dallas. I think Dallas, obviously, they're hurt right now. They're missing AD, so you got to kind of do this with a grain of salt. But much needed win for them. They're 4-1, I believe, with the Jimmy, with wins against the Kings, wins against the Bulls, wins against Dallas, and I forgot the other one. They lost to Dallas before the break, so they're 1-1 with Jimmy against Dallas. It's tough, man. They're sitting at 9th seed right now. I think a game or two under Dallas. You got at the top of the helm, you got OKC, you got Memphis, Denver, the Lakers, Houston, Clippers, Minnesota. Those are like the top 7 right now. I'm looking at the West, and I'm looking at Steph. I'm looking at Jimmy. First of all, Golden State has quietly been one of the best defenses in basketball this year. And when you have a team with Draymond Green, 9 times out of 10, that's probably going to happen. With the addition of Jimmy Butler, that should only help this defense be much better. Moses Moody has quietly been playing really good basketball in his last 10 to 15 games. You know, that's really good. You're getting quality productions from Pods. Pods has been playing better. You know, Kevon Looney in spurt minutes, Quentin Post in spurt minutes. Buddy Hield has also quietly been playing much better. But you know, Buddy Hield is a roller coaster. Yeah. So he'll have his moments of good, his moments of bad. Right now, we're in his moments of good. Hopefully, we continue that. But in terms of just his decision making and taking bad shots to good shots, I think that's been really good for him in the last couple of games. He's been taking good shots. He's been putting more effort on defensive end. Kuminga will be back eventually. This team can be a team that can make the second round. I don't like depending on certain matchups. You know, I think OKC is elite. I think Denver, they're elite. I think the Lakers are elite. I think Golden State doesn't have the POA defense for those type of matchups. Right now, they're plugging out Pods to guard the best guard, the guard guy. Like they had him guarding Kyrie. Buddy Hield was guarding Kyrie. So they don't have that, but they have quality team defense that really makes teams struggle. And I think as long as you keep getting this Steph, which I think Jimmy Butler is really helping the load off of Steph. Now those Stephless minutes look really good because you have Jimmy Butler in those rotations. And Jimmy Butler is a guy who can get to the line, something they needed, who can put 2 feet at the in the paint, something they needed, can get to the mid-range, and there's a really good passer at the wing position. That's an added-on playmaker, somebody that can generate quality looks in this offense. And on top of that, he brings an edge on defense as a help side defender, another bigger body, stronger, physical, a really good rebounder. Outside of OKC, Denver, and the Lakers, this team can beat any team in the West. I mean, that's pretty much saying, and even OKC, I think OKC is better, but I think matchup-wise, I don't think they're far off from the matchup. But Denver, I think that's super, super tough. The Lakers with LeBron and Luka. But outside those 3 teams, I really think Golden State could beat any one of these teams in the West. I think the Clippers, they could beat Minnesota, Houston, Memphis, if they continue to play like this. Not to mention, Golden State has the number 1 easiest schedule in the second half of the year.
That's actually Minnesota. Minnesota's number 1.
Sorry, well, I know they have like 2 or 3. I know they're up there for sure. So that really helps Golden State's case to kind of make a push and get over teams like the Clippers or teams like Minnesota, but you just told me they have number one, so maybe not. But definitely just get higher in the standings to where they could potentially see one of those teams in Houston or the Clippers. But I really think this team is really good, and it may not be this year, but I think this team has found a nice little pairing in Steph and Jimmy and Dre. And this team is a sleeping giant. You just have to see how the season plays out, especially when Kuminga comes back. How do you plug him in now to the new dynamic of Jimmy and Draymond? Where do you place him? Can he continue on to be a good quality defender? He's a really good rebounder. He can get to the rim. So that's really what I'm intrigued about. But I'm really liking what I'm seeing so far from this Golden State Warriors team. It's a bright spot. And it's the one key thing is just getting Steph going, man. I think that's been the whole thing this year is that getting Steph another guy to relieve that pressure. And now he's been getting it going over his last 10 games. And that's really been the excitement for me.
Let me ask you what you thought, because I found myself a lot more optimistic about this Warrior team watching the first 5 games, Jimmy. The offense has been way better. I believe this is the highest offensive rating he's posted in a smaller sample size so far. But I want to ask, because one of the players they've been starting who's been playing a lot for them is Brandon Pajimski. What do you think about him being the starting lineup as one of those closing starters? Do you think that with Jimmy now coming in, taking the pressure off Steph, moving him off the ball, and kind of adding, like you highlighted, that extra playmaker to kind of open up that extra part of the offense, is Pod someone that can start realistically and kind of play a lot better than what he was in the first half?
Yes and no, because I think there was one play specifically in the game where I think you had Pods or Draymond with the ball, but either another ball handler with the ball. And Steph and Jimmy both set back screens. Steph went free, brought 2, and then Jimmy went back door for the alley-oop. And it was just multiple plays like that where you now have Pods in the lineup, and Pods is another ball handler along with Draymond Green. Now you can have 2 guys play off the actions, 2 guys who are really good screeners for their position, and Jimmy and Steph, which opens up the floor for everything else to where Jimmy, now you have to worry about him getting to the rim. Steph, he always gets 2 on the ball, especially when he's off ball. He doesn't have the ball. That's where he sees 2 guys. So you have guys already trailing him. But now you have a guy that can actually make layups. The problem with this Golden State team before the All-Star break, they were one of the worst finishing teams in basketball. Like that was a thing, and you can chalk it up to just missing layups, them not being able to get quality looks. Steph was a part of that problem too. Now you're seeing with Jimmy Butler, it helps that. I think Pods, it's all matchup dependent. I think him guarding the best guard scorer, offensive player, is a little bit troublesome at time, but you have so much help side defense. And if Pods continues to play well, continues to hit the 3 ball, just be effective in transition, I can see it happening. The only fear is him or Kuminga in certain lineups. Who do you want down the stretch? Do you want to go bigger with Kuminga? Steve Kerr's already stated he wants Dre at the 5 for the rest of the year. That's their best lineup, and I agree. It may put some toll on him, but now Kuminga, Pods, how do you plug it in? Who comes in? Moses Moody, is that a guy who he's been hitting at a high clip from the 3-point line? Do you want him out the lineup? So Steve Kerr, you have 4 championships. Steve Kerr, you're probably going to be a Hall of Fame coach. This is why you get paid the big bucks. Figure this out. But Pods has played a lot better lately, and it gives me good optimism to where I can see him down in stretch of games being in the closing lineups as long as he's making good decisions.
Pods has always felt like one of those players earlier in the year. There was so much expectation with what the Warriors are saying. Like, this guy, we think he's going to be an all-star really soon. We think he's going to be really special. And I think earlier in the year, we saw a dude where he was a little ahead of his skis. It felt like he was forcing things. Everything was rushed. It felt like he had that weird mental block where he felt like he needed to play better than he was. And I think the Butler acquisition actually is really going to help him because I think Pods, because he's such a high IQ player, I think he's going to be much better when he has more opportunities to exploit gaps, exploit closeouts, make connective reads, which is what Butler and Draymond do, and that could be contagious. And we've seen him play really well recently, like Riv said. And I think he had 17 today, and he had 21 the other day. I think we're going to see more games like that because when he's just able to just like not think too much and just make the easy connective read and attack closeouts and take an open 3, get a pull-up, he's a much more effective player. And I think Pods is a big winner of this deal. And honestly, Riv, you know what? I think you're going to really like my answer to this question, by the way. Because Riv thinks I'm a Warriors hater, and I'm not a Warriors hater. I'm just a truth. I'm about the truth, man. You know, I am.
Interesting.
I just tell the truth. I just say how it is. Why do you think I never gave up on Jaden McDaniels? Because I just tell the truth, right? So I think the Golden State Warriors, there is an outside world for this team to make the Western Conference Finals. Outside world. I think the Western Conference is more open than it's ever been in recent years, especially because I agree OKC is the favorite. And you mentioned Denver and the Lakers, and then there's this big tier of other teams. I see really flawed basketball teams still. I think Denver's been great recently. I think a part of why they got their behinds handed to them yesterday was just the level up in the playing field. They won 9 in a row, but they played a real team this time. And I think Denver still could have some limitations with the defense and with, okay, we've seen Jamal Murray play better. We've seen MPJ play better. Let's see if they hold up in the playoffs because they didn't last year. Are they the matchup number 2 compared to other guys? Like, there's still questions with Denver, even though I consider them a contender. And the Lakers still, we're going to talk about them later, but some of the perimeter defensive stuff, the big man stuff. The Warriors, you have Steph Curry, who's averaged 29 plus points per game since getting Jimmy Butler. Draymond and Jimmy are synergized, and I've always thought Jimmy Butler is one of those players. If he's motivated, you're getting a top 20, 25 player. If he's not, you're getting a top 55, 60 player. And we're getting a top 25 player in Jimmy Butler. So you have that Steph, Jimmy combination. You have Draymond. You have some role players starting to really figure it out, and I think we're going to see guys like Looney continue to play well with even more connective playmakers because it felt like the Warriors were kind of missing that a little bit this year, and Kyle Anderson wasn't quite effective enough for how they wanted to fit all of those pieces together. So I think Butler, if they can just figure out the spacing, because you have to integrate Kuminga into this, you have to figure out some of those late game lineups like John alluded to. There's some questions, but if just everything clicks and Kuminga figures it out here, and Butler keeps playing like this, and Steph keeps playing like this, and just the IQ, the defense, the speed, the versatility, the West is too flawed for me to say, oh, they can't beat that team in the series. So I think the Warriors have an outside shot of making the Western Conference Finals.
It's not the craziest thing I've ever heard because they're only 2.5 games back from the 6th seed. And after the top 2 or 3 teams in the conference, it is pretty open. Like you said, you have the Rockets, you have the Grizzlies, a lot of teams that kind of have looming questions. My reservation with the Warriors is they're winning right now. They've looked pretty much as good as you could possibly expect. Yeah. When you bring back Jonathan Kuminga, he is a very specific kind of niche player. And if they plug him back into the starting lineup, I wonder if that would make it a clunky fit 3 through 5 with Jimmy at the 4 and Draymond for as much IQ and athleticism as those 3 guys can bring. At the same exact time, AirPods, I struggle saying his last name, so I'll continue using the nickname.
Pajemski.
There you go. He does a lot of nice things. He's a good rebounder. He's a solid connected passer. I don't think he's a good enough shooter to be a starting 2 guard, at least currently, because this year he has really had a mental block. It's been something that really was apparent more so earlier in the year. Yeah. And to me, I think it's better off starting Moses Moody. But once you get past those top 4 guys, you have a weird amalgamation of all these young players who are specific. And the question is how Steve Kerr can kind of puzzle it all together and piece those guys in the right lineups. And I think once you have JK and Trey's come back off the bench, it's going to be a new challenge for them to integrate them in without kind of taking away what they've been able to add in with Jimmy. And at the same time, my question is just the inconsistencies of guys like Buddy Hield or Moses Moody, who you haven't seen get really high-end starting caliber minutes in the playoffs. So I think this Warriors team can get a top 5 or 6 seed, maybe pry it away from the Clippers and potentially win a playoff series. But I believe after that core 3, there's so many questions down the entire board that I look at as kind of a frisky first-round exit, even if this is the best player Jimmy's ever played with, and it's as motivated as he's been in probably 2 or 3 years. And I love the trio that they have from an IQ standpoint. It's just a really unestablished supporting cast to me.
I don't hate that. And I think there's a middle ground that I'm playing with you, with your saying and with Wilder's saying. And there is an outside world I can see us making the WCF. There's also a world where I can see us losing in the first round too. Like there's definitely a situation where, you know, with the WCF, you have Steph, you have Jimmy, you have Draymond, and they're so good that they can just energize and uplift the young players that John is alluding to, the guys that haven't really given you that, that faith. But then there's a world where they do fizzle out, and then you do have a situation where they're struggling, and then you lose in the first round. I think where I'm at with it is, I think Kuminga should come off the bench.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I don't mind Pod starting because that moves Steph to the 2, and Steph's the greatest shooter on planet Earth. So I don't mind Steph being the 2 guard. I think Moses Moody has earned the right to start as of lately, just because of his defensive energy, what he's been giving you to the 3-point line. He's been able to attack closeouts. I think the starting lineup of Pod, Steph, Moody, Jimmy, Dre is fine right now. And then you have J.K., Heald, Quentin Post, Santos if he comes off the bench. Trace, if he jumps back in the lineup, sure. His problem is he's not a good enough finisher at the big man position. That's why Kevon Looney has seen more minutes than him lately. He's just not a consistent finisher at the rim. And that's a problem for a guy that athletic. And his hands are a little funny. He can't really catch, which is also an issue. But, yeah, there's just so many good teams. Like Minnesota's good. The Clippers are good. Memphis is good. I don't think I have an issue with Houston. Like, I think we can go in there. We can beat Houston. I think that's the one team where we can handily beat Houston in 6 games, 5 games, because that's a team where you're talking about there's no faith in our young players. That whole starting 8 is just like full on outside of Dylan Brooks and Fred. What do we know about you? And then we have the best player, and we probably have the second best player in that series too, in Steph and Jimmy. So, but, other teams like Memphis, who have kind of had some semblance of playoff experience, Minnesota with Ant-Man and Rudy, then you got the Clippers with Kawhi and Harden. They're a sleeping giant. I agree. I think tier 1 is definitely Denver, Lakers I'll throw in there, and OKC. But that tier 2 with Minnesota, the Clippers, Dallas if they're healthy. I throw Golden State in there. Those in Memphis, those 5 teams at any point can just get it clicking. And then, boom, they could be like Wilder said, one of those teams outside looking in as a WCF team.
I think we all agree on this, too, because I'm not even saying I think they're going to make the Western Conference Finals. But like John said, if the pieces can come together, and there's a lot of mismatched pieces that they have to just blend in and make one efficient machine here. But I think it's possible. These aren't bad players they're trying to mold. It's just flawed players who need certain lineups to be effective, particularly a lot of the young players, and your second and third best players aren't floor spacers, which makes it kind of hard for a guy like Jonathan Kuminga. And in the Western Conference, I truly think OKC's tier 1. I think Denver is in its own mini tier. And I think after that, it's a pretty even playing field. I think a lot of teams I think are a lot better than they are, but have been struggling with health and things of that nature.
Oh, yeah.
And
Dallas.
Yep, Dallas is an obvious example. So I don't really know what to expect of the West. If you ask me how many teams can make the Western Conference Finals this year, I might say 7. I'm not kidding. I just think the Warriors are in that group of teams that could make the Western Conference Finals.
Give me the 7.
I just threw a number
on
out.
the spot.
I think OKC, Denver, Lakers, Warriors, Grizzlies. Can Houston make the conference finals?
No.
I don't think they can.
Unfortunate, but no.
I don't think
you didn't say your team.
I didn't say. I'm so on the fence with if my team could. They made the Western Conference Finals last year, so I'll just say yes because we saw it last year. But I would have them like very fringe in that conversation because Minnesota is just not smart late in games, and a lot of their lineups that have worked have come from not being healthy. So I don't really know what the final puzzle piece looks like with this team yet. So I'm not confident in Minnesota in this conversation. But in terms of pure odds for the Warriors, I think they're top 5-ish in terms of who can go far in the Western Conference.
If Dallas is healthy, they give OKC hell in the first round.
Oh, sure. Dallas, obviously. But Dallas, they're such a
I don't think it's
injured mess right now. And they have so many things to figure out when everybody's healthy.
It's unfortunate.
It's really hard to feel it come together like that.
Even if they were healthy, Kyrie's been wonderful this year. He's non-engine. And AD can ramp it up. And then when he gets to that insane performance, that vintage AD we saw.
There goes the calf.
He gets injured. Because his body can't really hang when he's kind of giving it 110%. Even that's not possible. But you get my point.
We do get your point, John. We get it. But I just think defensively, they'll just give OKC so much issues. I mean, you've seen when they played OKC this season. I mean, they still give them hell. I mean, this is a team that knows this team like the back of his hand. Now you add in AD. Obviously, we're theorizing it because we only seen it for one game. But you add AD to an already devastating front court in Lively with Gafford. Now them at the rim, you have AD getting back to his position and playing the four with PJ Washington, Klay Thompson, and Najee Harrison. I mean, Najee Marshall. I'm so sorry. Splitting time at the 3 spot. Yeah, I don't think Kyrie's a number one initiator, but Kyrie can get nights. There can be nights where Kyrie is just,
of course,
unconscious, and then you're like, oh shit, it's 2-2. We're going to OKC. What are we gonna do? Like, we can't stop Kyrie. So that's what, if they're healthy, though, obviously that's a long shot because they're kind of like Mitch in the sense this year where we don't know if they're going to be healthy this year at all. But, we'll see for sure. I think I agree with Wilder, though. I think there's a lot of teams this year. And I know OKC is the overwhelming favorite, but they have some matchups that they might struggle with too. And then the Lakers, there's some matchups where they can kill. There's some matchups where they can struggle. Same thing with Denver.
There's a lot of misfits in the West this year. They're misfits. They're so flawed. And it's really hard to, because even like if Dallas was healthy, I think John disagrees with me. I love the structure of that roster. Love
it's a great structure.
I love the team. Like it sucks that they're hurt and that might not change, but if they're healthy, they got the best rim protection in the league and they got perimeter shot makers and they got good young wings. And it's just like, it's just really well built. And the Mavericks management is going to forever get killed for the Luka trade, rightfully so. But you see the vision, right? Harrison, like you see the vision.
Kind of, yeah.
I see the vision. I don't agree with the vision because if Anthony Davis was Kevin Garnett, then I would totally get the vision. But AD is just a little bit of a step back from that and definitely less reliable.
Listen, you won't get pushback from me as far as the structure of the Mavericks because having AD at the 4 alongside 2 quality rim protectors is preferential for him. You'd like if one of them was a floor spacer, of course, but you have 2 solid to above average starting centers alongside him when healthy. And then you have one of the most versatile wing groups in the league between Max Christie, who's been wonderful, 17 points a game on great efficiency, quality defensive player at 21 years old on one of the best contracts in the NBA. I'm one of the biggest Najee Marshall fans probably in the world. I mean, he's been awesome this year. And shout out to the Pelicans for letting him walk. And then along with those 2 guys, you have PJ Washington, who's been pretty damn good. So I think the structure of the Mavericks is kind of awesome. It's the ideal team for AD. It's just unfortunate that like they still, even if they were healthy, do lack some playmaking and advantage creation, being able to break down defenses. Kyrie's an insane tough shot maker, is one of the best of all time, but he doesn't separate the way he did 5 years ago. He's 32 years old. So I do think there's still some shortcomings and really in the offensive end, some blind spots for the Mavericks, even with how well they've kind of organized their entire 9-man rotation.
It's like a really nice car that you look at from the outside and you're like, oh my gosh. And then you go inside the car and you're like, where's the steering wheel?
Yeah.
That's the Mavericks right now. It's a great idea. It's a great fantasy. I don't know how this is actually going to get off the ground. So yeah, Dallas, it's going to be very interesting. This is obviously not a topic about Dallas. It's Golden State, but yeah, the Western Conference is very wide open. And let's continue talking about the Western Conference with a very big game yesterday, the Lakers and the Nuggets. And the Lakers, they dominated. So the question, I'll start with John on this. Does this really establish the Lakers as a legitimate top-tier Western Conference team?
The answer is yes. The Lakers this year don't have a conventional roster. Of course, when you're starting Jackson Hayes at the 5, you're going to have a lot of detractors. That being said, what we saw from the Lakers yesterday defensively, they basically said, Aaron Gordon, he went 4-7 from 3. We're going to leave you wide open. And despite us not having the most size, the Lakers are one of the most powerful and one of the more long teams in the NBA. When you have Rui Hachimura, LeBron, DFS, Luka as well, who's a guard, and then you add in the shot creation and the solid defense that Austin Reeves gives you. This is one of the best teams in the Western Conference at stockpiling the paint. Really, last night we saw them load up on Nikola Jokic and let everyone else try to beat them. They defended Jamal Murray fairly well. He hit 6 threes, But even with that, we saw Nikola Jokic play one of his worst games of the season with Rui and LeBron guarding him. And those guys are able to stay in front of him. And then you have Jackson Hayes, who, for all of his limitations, I don't like Jackson Hayes. Not a fan of what's happened off the court. I think on the court, he's a below average player. He's still a freak athlete who on offense finishes well on defense. If he's roaming, he can really be effective, kind of just muddying things up and kind of getting in the way. And he's a help defender that's leaving Aaron Gordon wide open. So he's just sitting on the nail, making Nikola Jokic's life a lot more hard because he's forcing him to move to the left side. If he goes right, he's walking into a second or third defender. And last night, we also saw what makes this Lakers team a contender is Luka Doncic and LeBron James playing together. The amount of advantages these guys generate physically is relentless, and not too many teams can contain that with two wings with the size, power, and athleticism to guard both of them. LeBron's 40 years old, playing at the level of a top 15 player, and that's the best teammate Luka's ever had offensively, just as a whole. And along with that, when you have Luka going up against Nikola Jokic and they're playing and they're offensively running high pick and roll and pulling Jokic out the paint, they can get whatever they want offensively. Whether it's Luka hitting a tough pass to the perimeter, a skip pass, or a really nice feed down below, he's consistently making the right read and dissecting the defensive coverages the Nuggets are trying to throw at them. Last night, he had one turnover. He got great looks off these dump offs and feeds into the paint. So this Lakers offense is deadly because Luka gives you that floor that 80 wasn't gonna with LeBron James. Your floor with Luka is a top 10 offense. And defensively, over these last 15 games, the Lakers have been one of the best defenses in the NBA. And it's not just because they have this group of 4 to 5 strong, versatile, physical defenders. It's also the fact that J.J. Redick is a better coach as a rookie in year one than Darvin Ham. And he has a much better understanding of his personnel. And we saw that manifest in last night's matchup. Did they throw the kitchen sink at the Nuggets? Absolutely. But I at least like to see them have that in their bag, opposed to having really no strong game plan at all. I think this Laker team is really starting to come together.
Yeah, this Lakers team is good. They really did throw the playoff kitchen sink at Denver. Like they took this game as a playoff game, and as you should. I feel like certain matchups, you come to play prime time Saturday night. I respect it. You want to win that game, and you should want to win that game. And Luka had something to prove. His last games with the Lakers haven't been great. He hasn't been playing well, and they've been losing games to Charlotte, and Utah is not something you want to see. But against Denver in the Mile High City, at home, Denver's fan base and the atmosphere there is insane. They went in there and they dominated Denver. And JJ Redick for me is the highlight of this game just because of how the scheme was defensively for the Joker. It was truly amazing. There wasn't nothing insane. You threw the kitchen sink at him. You have 2 or 3 guys sitting there waiting for him to make a move, waiting for him to do anything, and you're there. And I hated how Mike Malone had no counter for it, like nothing. They were still running the same stuff, still trying to, do the same thing. And all it led to was turnovers, and the Lakers were getting out and they were running in transition. You out there, you have Luka and LeBron, 2 of the 3 best minds in basketball, maybe 2 of the 4 best, because Chris Paul is still one of the best minds. And then you have the Joker, who's one of the best minds. So definitely 2 of the top 5, I'd say, to be fair. Best minds in basketball, especially on offense, just dissecting this Denver defense that's already not good. And now you're giving them many avenues to destroy you. I mean, Denver was switching everything. Denver was getting lost in coverage. They were getting lost in helping out and defending. They were sending 2, but it wasn't enough recovery speed, recovery time. This team was they looked lost up there. They looked like they weren't prepared for this matchup. And the Joker said it best after the game in his post-game presser, we got big-headed playing in that 9-game win streak because, like Wilder said, they didn't really play anybody. They dominated teams that we know they can dominate. We went up against a real team, and we got our asses handed to us. I don't want to overreact too much to the game because I want to give Denver an opportunity to throw a counter, to, set a game plan for the next time they meet, because I feel like they've thrown you. They've thrown the first punch. How do you respond? How do you recover to that first round that they gave you? I'm excited to see that, but you have your team shooting over 40% from the three-point line in this game. You're getting a shit ton of open looks. Rui, Austin Reeves was dominating the third guy, because now you have a guy you have the game plan for, because he's a guy who can get to the cup. He's a guy who can hit step back threes. He's a guy who can work well in the pick and roll. Then you have Vando, even though he did foul out, or he had 5 or 6 fouls, whatever it was, giving you high
5,006 minutes is
he was still giving you high energy on the floor. You had Dorian Finney-Smith making some quality plays, Gabe Vincent hitting some timely threes. I mean, this Lakers team isn't the most talented. They're still lacking in the front court department. But I think what they do in transition and the effort they give and how their wings and how their guards present tough challenges on the perimeter, I think that's where they'll probably bank their money on. And then their elite offense is something great. I think Denver is still a tough team. I think what we know from Denver is offensively they're going to have to give you all they can give you, but they have a lot to be desired on the defensive end.
Wow, you are muted.
Muted as
Got
hell.
you. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I had a microphone issue I've been trying to fix for the last couple minutes. But so there's a couple things with Denver, that game particularly. You guys mentioned it. They throw the entire kitchen sink at Jokic, just gave him all the attention, let the other guys get you. And it worked yesterday. Can that work in a 7-game series? Because it used to be, oh, shoot, I guess we have to just have one-on-one with Jokic, because if you put too much attention on him, he's going to kill you. It didn't work out yesterday, but historically, that's been kind of the book on Jokic. The best you can do is just let him get 40 and just hope he doesn't let everybody else get involved. So that's one question. But in regards to the Lakers, I have a comp. I want to hear what you guys think about this. It's not a perfect comp. It's just the best recent stylistic comp. They kind of give me like similarities to like Brooklyn a couple years ago with Harden, KD, and Kyrie, where it's like you have a surplus of shot making and creativity and overall talent. And Austin Reeves has been so good. I'll throw him in that third juggernaut in a way, because he's been that good this year.
Yeah.
And you have Luka, you have you have LeBron, and it's just kind of very imperfect roster after that. And the Lakers, they've been a really good team defense the last couple weeks, and they might just have really good coaching that keeps it a really high floor, kind of like Phoenix with Frank Vogel last year. The Suns were a quietly good defense last year, and they should not be. So I think the formula for the Lakers, it's can they maintain that Frank Vogel style where it's like, okay, they're the 12th defense, and the offense just takes off. I don't worry about the bigs offensively for the Lakers. That's not where it really matters. What really matters is in the playoffs against a team like Denver, can those big men be good enough in that series? And if the answer is yes, I think they are potentially a contender if they can continue to get Luka Doncic integrated, because let's be honest, it was Luka's first really good game yesterday, and he did it in a weird fashion where it wasn't like the same like high usage double step back, get to the rim 50 usage. He was kind of getting it in transition and some tough threes and things of that nature. They need to get Luka's head in the game consistently, because I still think he's kind of feeling what went down with the Dallas trade still. And they need to make sure that the defense is good enough in the playoffs, because the bigs are a question, and your 3 main guys, except maybe LeBron, aren't going to be the most reliable. So this might be a terrible answer. Are the Lakers top echelon? I don't really know. I just think they're kind of in that group again of those 5-6 really good teams where if certain things go a certain way, they can go to the conference finals, etc. But I still have a lot of questions, but that Denver game was definitely a good step.
Yeah, the name that I forgot in that group of versatile, powerful, and he's not as powerful as he's long wings, is Jared Vanderbilt. He's someone that's only playing 15 minutes a game for them, but in those minutes, he makes his impact all over the defensive end. Per 36, Vando is averaging 13 rebounds a game, nearly 3 steals. That's another player that for 5 to 10 minutes a night can come in and give you a little bit of that extra spark as your 7th or 8th man. It's not ideal, but he is a positive when he's on the floor. And especially on the defensive end, I think we tend to look at the reputation of a lot of these guys, but they have a philosophy, and a lot of these players are buying into what JJ Redick is establishing. And when you translate it to the other side of the ball, we talked about it before on the podcast. I got shit for this once upon a time. You have Luka and Braun, but Austin Reeves is one of the best third options offensively in the NBA. He's one of the best connected passers. He's one of the most efficient players. He's shooting 70% at the rim this year, 91st percentile, 44% from mid-range. He can create off the dribble, and he's a good three-point shooter at 37%. He has a knack for getting to the foul line and playing through contact, and he's also somebody who holds up at 6'5" on the defensive end fairly well. There's not a weakness in his game, and as that tertiary second creator, kind of that safety valve that Luka can play off of, it's a great fit. And I'm not sold on the Lakers and the idea of them moving him this offseason to get a big because of how well he can scale down. And at the same time, if you want Luka to have a lower usage, you can have him play off the ball just a little bit more. And I'm not saying it's a one-on-one comparison stylistically, but when you had a Jalen Brunson, they didn't. The Mavericks, this is fully tap into letting Luka play off of him a little bit more until, of course, Brunson left. With Austin Reeves, you can run more offense through the supporting cast without making the entire offense Luka-centric. And that's one of the biggest benefits here. And I think for Austin to be shooting 38% from 3 the last couple of years, that's really highlighted. He can play in almost any spot. And I think JJ Redick should be in Coach of the Year discussions. The Lakers are 34-21. They're the 4th seed in the Western Conference, despite injuries all over the season. And you look at this team, for as unique a roster as this, they have a lot of great strengths. This team's only 6 or 7 guys deep. They've got Jordan Goodwin. Riv, you forgot about him. He playing fairly well off the bench. Gabe Vincent's been playing fine in his minutes. Yesterday,
He was ass, brother.
What?
Jordan Goodwin was ass. I ain't forget about him. He was ass.
Listen, man, he's contributing his limited time. 4 of 10 from 3-point land. What can I say?
Yeah, he's
been a positive off the bench in his 11 minutes last night. And then, of course, we forget Dolan Connect because he's hardly played. But that's another player who off the bench can give you a little bit of that scoring punch, that shot making. But I think the biggest thing that Redick's done by starting Rui Hachimura instead of DFS, the versatile, more established wing, Rui's found a rhythm offensively, and he is this team's biggest X factor. He had 4 assists 2 last night. He's a quality defender, and he's someone that can give you 15 to 17 while being one of the best 3-point shooters off the ball, off the catch. He's efficient, and he's really that perfect 4th option. So offensively, they've really built a pitcher-esque offense and a support system for Luka to, quite frankly, have what I think it's his best supporting cast on the offensive side in his career.
Where do you have JJ Redick in head coach? And because this is what kills me. This is my whole gripe with this code. JJ Redick should get Coach of the Year.
Where should he rank? Third behind Kenny Atkinson.
I think third is nuts.
Mark Dagnall.
I think third is nuts. Why is he getting more consideration than Ime Udoka is beyond me. Why is he getting more consideration than Taylor Jenkins is also beyond me.
Ime Udoka is the only name. Ime, if you want to take that, I agree with that.
Second seed in the West.
I forgot Ime.
Second seed in the West.
4 candidates.
Second seed in the West. Elite half-court offense this year. Hasn't been done in that era with him. Elite offense in general. Elite defense. Team was battered last year with injuries. Come back this year. You have arguably a guy who's potentially can win Rookie of the Year in this weak-ass class. So I'll give that a little asterisk to it. Jaren Jackson's playing the best basketball of his career. Your bench is one of the best benches in basketball. Then you have Ime Udoka, who has this team swimming colors defensively and in transition. I get their half-court offense is pretty not good, but they're a top 6 seed in the West. Then you have, of course, the guy who has 40-plus wins in the East in Cleveland, Kenny Atkinson. And then, of course, you have to throw Joe Mazzulla up here because not many teams have a historic season after winning a chip. You know that, John Wilder. You also know that. And they're on their way to 60-plus wins. So I get JJ Redick has been really good. I do. I get JJ Redick has been really good. I don't want to discredit that. But I think the allure of JJ Redick is underselling what these other guys have been doing for the whole season. This team, the Lakers, they've been good all year, but they just jumped into top 5 conversations probably like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Houston's been good all year. Memphis has been at the top of the West all year. I think we have to give that a little bit more due diligence. Now, of course, if the season ends in April and the Lakers are sitting at 3 or 4, obviously the discussion becomes a lot different. But just because of consistency and throughout what we've seen all year, I feel like that is unfair to put JJ Redick over those 2 guys specifically, Ime and Jake. I don't think you have them over Kenny and Mazzulla. I don't know if you
No,
do.
Ime will give you because Ime's done a better job this year. But the Lakers traded Anthony Davis, and they have
For
the
Luka
best
Doncic.
No, let me finish. They traded Anthony Davis, and they have the best defense in the NBA the last 15 games with Jackson Hayes as their starting center.
Memphis has had arguably the best defense in the league all year.
Do you realize the difference between having the Rockets and the Grizzlies personnel defensively and the Lakers personnel? It's quite a bit different. And when you look at every decision that JJ Redick's made, he has not had a single misstep in the process. I know in a few games versus the Hornets and the Jazz, they didn't come to play. But then last night, we watched them go into Denver and beat the shit out of the Nuggets and stop Jokic and throw everything. A lot of the things which they kind of did reuse and I guess you could say they replicated some of what they did in that 2023 playoff run, which took them to the conference finals.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think JJ Redick easily deserves the recognition as one of the 5 best coaches, one of the 5 most impressive jobs. I wouldn't put him in the top 3 maybe, but he easily has had one of the most impressive rookie seasons I've seen for a head coach. And again, there's not been a better defense in the NBA since they traded Anthony Davis. So I think that is something which, when you compare his personnel to the Grizzlies, who have 12 rotation players and Jaren Jackson and a litany of quality two-way players, and the Grizzlies, which are loaded with depth and these versatile defensive players, it's not the same. He's got Jackson Hayes as a plus. Ain't no other coach done that before.
Question, John. Quick question. When did Anthony Davis get traded? Just so I want to be fair. When did Anthony Davis get traded?
He played 42 games for the Lakers, so it was probably, I would say, 7 games ago. 8
Okay,
games.
so playing offenses like the Blazers, Charlotte, Utah twice. I'll give him grace for Indiana.
How about the Nuggets last night? Is that offense good for you?
No. You said the last 15 games, so I'm just going past the 15 games. So let's just say back end of January, right? Let's just say start from January 21st. They play the Wizards offense. They play Boston. You get a W from me. Play Golden State. Get a W from me. Then they played Charlotte. Then they played Philly. They lost. They played Washington. Played Knicks. You get a W from me. Played the Clippers offense. Play Golden State. W from me. Indiana. W from me. And then Utah, Charlotte, Portland, and then Denver. So
half of the games were against pretty competent offense.
Yeah, and then the other half is like against bottom of the barrel. Here's my whole gripe with it. And I don't think you're wrong in your sentiment. And I think if we're just talking about who's a better coach, stacking up, I think that's a different question than who's in coach of the year consideration. I think that's 2 completely different questions, because I can think a guy can win coach of the year and them obviously not be the best coach in basketball. I think Kenny Atkinson, I think he's the favorite right now for coach of the year. I think what he's done, I don't think nobody can take that away from him. I think Mark Dagnall is probably 2. I think Joe Mazzulla, you have to put in that conversation at 3. I think you said you give me Ime.
I put Ime at 3.
Okay, so Ime, Joe, whatever, but them 2. I get it, Taylor. I get it. Memphis has the better infrastructure. They obviously
3 games behind them with that.
Yeah, obviously they have the better guys. I'm not disputing that. And of course, the West is so loaded, so tough that they're only 3 games behind them. But my whole thing is, you're talking about the last 15 games, the Lakers have been an elite defense. Memphis has been an elite defense all season. Taylor Jenkins has these guys, Ja missing games. You talk about injuries, Ja missing game. Desmond Bane missing games. He didn't even have all his wings to start the year with Vince Williams, with Gigi Jackson out for some time. And he's pretty much
still like 12 rotation players without them.
We didn't know they had 12 rotation players coming in, to be fair. We didn't. Taylor Jenkins gets the best out of his guys. That's a fact. So all I'm saying is, I just feel like there's a case for him to be in that conversation. I'm not saying JJ Redick is not having a great year. He's a bad coach. Nobody's saying that. What I'm saying is, Luka gets to your team. You lose AD. They were playing great defense when AD was down. That's a fact. When he got hurt, they were playing great defense. Now you have Luka. A lot of the argument for JJ being in the conversation for the last 10, 15 games, I can argue other coaches have been in that conversation, have had that same argument all year. I mean, do we think it's a difference between what JB Bickerstaff is doing as opposed to JJ Redick is doing? I don't think so. I think that's another guy who you can have them in the conversation for what he's been doing in the East. So, That's why that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I think when we talk about just coach of the year, it's more about your expectations and what you've been doing a lot in the regular season.
The coach of the year debate's been funny because I haven't really thought about it because I've just kind of given it to Kenny Atkinson. I haven't really considered second, third, or fourth. It's like, sure, if we need to have 4 or 5 names in the debate just to have them, sure. It's like this guy should be in the MVP conversation. It's like nobody actually thinks he's going to win MVP.
It's like when Sabonis was like 9th in MVP race.
He's in the conversation because 9's the number, right? That's what the coach of the year race feels like to me. It's Kenny Atkinson, and then I don't care after that. But now we're on the topic. Do you guys want to give like a top 5 coach of the year ranking right now?
Yeah, John, who's your top 5? Now I'm intrigued.
So I gave you guys my top 4.
First of all, what's your criteria? Let me ask that.
My criteria is what you do with what you're given.
Okay.
How much do you make with the ingredients that your front office gave you? So you guys have an idea of where I'm going to finish, but I'm going to go 5-1.
Thank you.
And I got to acknowledge JB Bickerstaff this year has been a game changer. The Pistons defense has gotten way better with the same exact supporting cast from last year. And there's great coaching all around the NBA. But that being said, for those few teams that had terrible coaching, like the Lakers last year or the Pistons, going from pretty poor, checked out coach to pretty good can be a world of a difference. It's how the Pistons went from 18 to 30 games. We still got 30 more to go. Number 5 for me is going to be JB Bickerstaff.
Mhm.
Number 4 is going to be JJ Redick. Number 3, have to credit Ime Udoka. I think I forgot about him because I've kind of overlooked the Rockets so many times because of their youth. They didn't really have I'm going to be careful with my words here. They don't have a top 10 to 20 player at this current point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And they've
They don't
still
have a top 30 player.
wins.
You're being nice. They don't have a top 30 player.
Yeah. Number 2, I'm going to go with Mark Dagnall. Even with Chet being out of right heart, they've been an elite defense. He's, to me, the most underappreciated coach in the NBA because I have looked at him every single year, making the absolute most of what he's given. And the Thunder have been arguably the best player development team alongside Miami. And the number 1, I think it's kind of unanimous. Kenny Atkinson has taken the Cavaliers to a new height, which not too many people were sure was there last year. I think he's unlocked Evan Mobley's confidence to be a lot more aggressive, particularly from three-point land, uncorking that thing. And, of course, he's really found the best of both worlds between their elite defense and one of the most gifted offensive groups. It was just a matter of kind of finding the right lineup. So Kenny Atkinson's my coach of the year.
Okay, I don't mind that list.
It's a perfect list.
Perfect's nuts.
Perfect.
Perfect is nuts. I think for me, like the only switch up I'd have, I'll probably definitely have Kenny at 1. I think Mark Dagnall, I'll definitely have him at 2. Ime at 3. I think JB has to go to 4. I think because you mentioned the Lakers, you mentioned Detroit. The Lakers were in the playoffs last year. Detroit wasn't. That's the difference with me. Detroit was one of the worst teams in the league last year, a laughing stock. They come in this year, we project them to be a laughing stock again, and bada boom, bada bing, they're a top 6 seed in the East. And then 5, I can see arguments.
That's not saying too much because there's only 6 teams with a winning record in the Eastern Conference.
Well, they have
the Pistons.
They have it, brother. They have a winning record. I got to give them some credit for that. We didn't think they get to 30 wins this fast. Let's just be honest.
I expect them to get to 30 wins at the end of the year.
For sure.
Yeah.
End of the year, 30 wins, but this fast, no.
Yeah.
5, this is where I can see arguments for JJ Redick after thinking about it. I can see arguments for Taylor Jenkins. I can see arguments for Joe Mazzulla. So either 3 of those guys are fine for me. I think all of them I think Taylor and JJ have the same. My team's been banged up. Whatever they've given me, I've been able to be productive with it. I've had great production. My team's been winning. I think Joe Mazzulla is just fresh off a title. Nothing has changed. We're still at a historical pace doing our thing. So those 3 definitely for sure. I think coach of the year conversations are always lost in the sauce because people just assume, oh, hey, this team's 55 wins. Let's give the guy the coach of the year because we think he's doing something. But no, in reality, it takes a ton to coach. And I think the game changer really comes playoff time is what are these guys going to do when the lights are the brightest and you have to game plan for it. That's why I've never always been the biggest fan of Mike Malone because I don't think he is the greatest at adjusting or putting out the best lineups. I think he is, I don't want to say a Joker merchant because it's hard to not say that because the Joker's so elite, but he has that same with Steve Curry, has that benefit of playing with an all-time great.
Yeah, the only changes I would make, I did like a little mini quick ranking like you did. Only changes, I actually think Ime Udoka is number 2 right now because here's a couple factors. A team without a top 30 player in the NBA is number 1 in the clutch this year.
It might be so nice. He might not be like top 35. I'll be honest.
They don't. Let's just be honest. They don't have a top 40.
Oh, yo, Wilder. We
he's
can go
not top
further. You
40.
want to keep going?
Yeah, Alperen Sengun is not top 40.
No, I'm with you. They're gonna look. I'm with.
I'm a Sengun fan, and I have like my top 50.
He's my least favorite player in the NBA.
Wow.
He's up there for me.
He is a jerk to watch. Like, I don't like him as a player.
He plays ugly for sure.
But it's not ugly. It's like gross and like sloppy, manipulative basketball. It's gross. It's like he's gonna flop around and then he's gonna give you a little cheap shot. Then go, ref, and then he's not gonna guard a freaking water bottle right on the next possession, and then he's gonna miss like half of his layups. Like, he is brutal to watch. I don't care if people tell me. I genuinely dislike him as a player.
Before you give me your list for Coach of the Year, I want to play a fun game. I'm going to name NBA players, and you're going to tell me when to stop at the point where Alperen Sengun is better than them.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't have to be both of us say stop, no, or
one of you had just one.
Okay.
I'm just gonna take a nap then, okay? Just wake me up after.
Here we go.
All right, here we go. Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, Shea, Jason Tatum, Wemby, Anthony Edwards, Anthony Davis, Jalen Brunson, Joel Embiid. 10 players. Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Cade Cunningham, LeBron James, Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young, Jaylen Brown, Jaren Jackson, Evan Mobley. That's 20 players. Karl Anthony Towns, Bam Adebayo, Damian Lillard, De'Aaron Fox, Jimmy Butler, Franz Wagner, Tyrese Halliburton. He's a little bit high. I'm going to have to lower him a little bit. John Morant, Tyrese Maxey, Domantas Sabonis should be higher. I have to move him up a little bit. Kyrie Irving, Paulo Banchero.
Brother, keep going. Keep going.
Rudy Gobert, Scotty Barnes. We're at 35. I know I stopped at the 30 point. Pascal Siakam, he should be higher too. Darius Garland, LaMelo Ball, Jalen Williams, Tyler Hero.
This is where I stop. This is where
I'm giving up.
Tyler Hero's 40.
Did you notice
keep
how
going?
he
There's some more
mentioned-
names.
Yeah, who's behind him?
Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, Derek White, Trey Murphy, Julius Randle.
Stop there. I'll stop at Trey Murphy.
Okay, so we're stopping around 42, 43.
44. And also, did you notice how he mentioned
I
Steph
forgot
Curry
Trey
number 11? Did you guys notice that?
What?
Did you notice how he mentioned Steph Curry 11th?
He has to configure his list. He has Embiid in front of him. We got to cut that shit. We got to cut that list immediately.
No, I think Steph's a top 10 player. That was.
Oh, you're back?
Oh.
Well, I always had him as a top 10 player.
You said no.
I'm just saying you mentioned him 11th.
I didn't mention Kawhi either. So like it really is like 44 names.
Oh, you didn't mention Kawhi? You can add him onto the list.
Yeah, it's around 44.
Oh, you guys want to hear who's also a better player than Alperen Sengun?
Who?
Ahmed Thompson.
Did I name? No, I didn't name him. He was right there.
I really like Ahmed Thompson.
Is this an old list, John?
No, this is like me updated like a couple weeks ago.
So you dropped Steph down. Yeah, we caught you. We caught you red-handed.
Yeah, I dropped that.
Ahmed Thompson, if you cater it to him on offense, I think can give you over 18 and 6 a game, and he is one of the best defenders in the league already. He's better than Sengun.
Hold on, Wilder, you're being generous. He gives you that, and you don't cater to him. So just imagine if you cater to him.
Well, he's giving like 14, but yeah.
No, as a starter, he's giving you like 16, 8, and 8.
He's giving 16, 9, and 5.
Off the sleep. That's off the sleep he's giving you that.
Yeah, he's better than Sengun. He's the best player.
I hold the fort at Trey Murphy and Tyler Hero. I think Tyler Hero is a product of just height and role. I think he's a good basketball player, but I think it's a product of height and role. Same thing with Trey Murphy. But I feel like Trey Murphy, I'm gonna wait on that. I feel like I can change my answer very soon. I'm gonna wait on that.
There's so many other names like Jalen Johnson.
You can say Zach LaVine.
I didn't. Harden.
You guys-
okay, this is 50. This is 50. Harden, Jared Allen, Laurie, Jamal Murray. I didn't name.
Oh God.
Even DeRozan. Like, there's a lot of names, like from 40 to 60, that he can take over him.
I am biased AF, but I genuinely think this player's better. I genuinely think Naz Reid is better.
I have him like 60 something. So
I think Naz Reid's a better player. You give him 34 minutes a game in the Sengun role, he's giving you 22 a game.
Not a crazy take.
I've heard crazier takes. I
Naz
think
Reid's
Sengun,
good, man. He's our second best offensive player now.
I think Sengun is underrated as a defensive player. I mean, opponents are 4% worse at the rim. No, I mean, he ranks in the top 85th percentile defending shots within 4 feet.
Ime Udoka's coach of the year then. Never mind. Ime Udoka's coach of the year, y'all. Okay. That just finalized it.
No,
Sengun's
I'm not-
85th percentile on something on defense.
This isn't me hating on Sengun.
This is me hating on Sengun.
I've been underwhelmed with Sengun this year. I didn't think he was an all-star. I do believe that people think he's a bad defender when he's an average defender.
Pretty fun though when he's like actually, because Houston's so good at just, because he's got great hands. So if you kind of just like have him hide and he just kind of jumps out of nowhere and tips something, he's pretty valuable. But then if you're able to isolate him and just attack him, it is brutal. It's brutal basketball. Like Ant just said the other day, I'm just going to attack Sengun in the first half, and he just got everything. So I don't know. I'm not a big Sengun guy. I think based on what we have in front of us, he's top 45. But there's like 10 players in the NBA. I'm just like, if they just got the opportunity that Sengun was blessed with on a bad team at first, we would have different conversations. So I'm not even sure if he's top 50, y'all.
I just wish he was a better finisher. That's what holds him back from being like a offensive hub, because he's shooting 64% at the rim, 28th percentile, and a lot of his shots come in that short mid-range area. And all mid-range, really, quite frankly. But from 4 to 14 feet is where he takes 40% of his looks, and he makes 40% of them, which is not great. So, like, when I look at this list, I feel like I have him like a little bit too high at like 40. So I might not have him, and like it's like tough if he's top 50.
Ime's good, man. Ime's a good coach. He's their best offensive player, you could argue, and they have the most clutch wins in the NBA, and they're just excellent at the end of games. That won't carry in the playoffs, but that is just really an impressive feat with how disciplined they are late in games. So
let me keep going. Who do you think's better, Brandon Ingram or Sengun?
I think they're like, I'm not kidding. I think they're like dead even. I think I would lean Ingram because I've seen Ingram take over in a playoff series. And I do think he is a better I can get my shot better than Sengun. So plus you can kind of, Ingram, I know he's a volume. He might slow the ball down, but you kind of have to play slow with Sengun sometimes. Whereas Ingram, I theoretically, even though he's not the shooter we thought he was coming in, theoretically, he can still play kind of a more game, I think. I'm not sure if you agree with that, but...
Sorry, my phone fell from my dresser to my table and made a loud
That's what it
sound
was.
in here. Yeah.
No, you're good. Like I said, I think Ingram, even though he hasn't shown it in the last couple of years, just pure theory, I think he's more blendable than a player of the Sengun archetype.
People forget Brandon Ingram's a top 3 playmaker at his position.
Yeah, he's a really good passer.
And he's one of the best isolation scorers in the NBA. To me, he's
better than Sengun.
Yeah. To me, he's a lengthier version of DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah.
And a slightly worse mid-range scorer. So
and athlete.
Yeah.
DeRozan in his peak was a freak athlete, man.
Yep.
I mean, that dude was like, what is a good comparison? He was literally just like
walking
the Robin version of Kobe. I'm not even kidding. It was like, how would you put that in the words? He was kind of like
he's the Tim Drake of Robins. I don't know, some shit like that. I don't know. I know what you mean.
Paul George of Kobe's. I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean for sure.
The Paul George of Kobe's. I don't know, but he's not as good as Paul George either. I don't know what the word is. He's like somewhere in between Wiggins and Kobe. Does that make sense? DeRozan in his prime.
He was a bucket. He was a bucket.
He was way better than Sengun, by the way. He's better right now, too. Wait, DeRozan's another name. Yay. Okay. Let's move to the conversation because this has become a Sengun bashing, which I invite.
You
but
enjoyed, yeah.
That was fun. All right. Last part of the show. We're going to talk about some of the rookies. I'll give Sengun this. He is better than the rookies this year. And
Hi, Bar.
let's talk about some of the rookies in terms of just rookie report. Riv, I want to start with you. Is there any recent rookies who've just stood out to you from the positive or negative forefront?
I think the easy answer is Stephon Castle. His last 18 games as a starter, he's averaged 18 points a game, shooting 54-37 splits. I think it was a good efficiency for a rookie.
He's shooting better.
Yeah, he's been really good for this team when he starts. I mean, just giving you high energy looks, being able to be a solid passer, and being able to make the right reads. And then defensively, you know what he brings you. As a rebounder, he's been solid. He's just another bigger guy that plays really physical and plays to the rim. I think Jalen Wells has gotten, he's been a consistent player all year. Just a guy who gives you high effort. I don't know why people call him an elite defender. I don't think he's elite. I think he's a really good effort guy. Like, he'll guard you up front. He'll stay in front of you, but he's not really a defensive stopper. That's not his role yet. I think he'll be that as he frames out more and becomes a lot more smarter. But definitely somebody who doesn't shy away from it. His personality is, I will take the best guy. I will stay in front of him. I will, dog out possessions. And I love that about Jalen Wells. And he's grown more confident at, putting the ball on the floor and attacking closeouts because he's a really good shooter. And, just being able to put more pressure on the rim. And I think that's really important. Zach Edey is another guy who has been solid all year, been able to, at points, show his aggressiveness at being a better three-point shooter. He has that nice turnaround hook shot to his game. Alexander Sarr is another player who defensively has been really, really good for that Washington Wizards team. Offensively, work in progress, but he's slowly been improving month by month, week by week, and you love to see that. Other rookies.
There's one that I don't want you to say.
Let me see if I can think of him.
I think too long.
Terrence Shannon? Just kidding.
I was gonna let you cook up that one for sure. I want to talk about Reed Shepherd. That's what I want to talk about.
Thank you.
Because Reed Shepherd is completely, he looks utterly not ready for the moment. I mean, in moments where they've given him minutes, he can't stay in front of any guard that he does guard. He gets beat off the dribble too quickly. He looks a little bit timid, a little bit scared. He looks like he's completely not prepared. And this is a guy who people thought, including me, he'll be NBA ready. And he'll be able to, instantly impact or give NBA ready minutes, even if it's quality 8 to 10 minutes. I think him not being ready, him being a struggle, he's stuck in the middle of being too good for the G League and not good enough for NBA minutes right now. And I think that's somewhere you don't want to be because there is no room to really get reps in. Because you need reps in this league, and I think that's the problem. But I think Reed, I'm gonna give him an opportunity to get better. I just think this year with Houston, they've been winning games. They want to be competitive. Reed's not giving them, high energy moments. I think that's going to be an issue. And he was a top 5 pick, so that's something you wanted to see from him, and you haven't really been able to see that.
I'm worried about Reed Shepherd. I just need to say that. Sorry,
John.
Go for it. I'm worried about Reed Shepherd. I know the Rising Stars game isn't where you come to evaluate players, but I wanted to at least see Reed Shepherd look confidently on an NBA court one time. And my bar was look good in the Rising Stars game. He didn't score in the Rising Stars game. He looked overwhelmed in the Rising Stars game. The jump shot, it's not falling right now, which I don't believe it's a capability thing. I think it's all mental. Every time I watch him on an NBA floor right now, he looks overwhelmed. And he's been a good, pretty good team defender, if I can say he's doing one thing right. He's a good passer, but the confidence to break somebody off the dribble, the confidence to be assertive, that hasn't been there. And at his size, if that isn't there, he's a liability on an NBA floor. So what I loved about Reed Shepherd as a prospect, he was my number 3 prospect in the draft, and I thought he was probably the most or second most ready. He hasn't been nearly as ready as I thought he would be, and it's been all mental. And I don't know if it's just you put him on NBA floor for an extended period of time on a team like the Wizards and he figures it out, or if it's like he's just overwhelmed. Sometimes a player like Jimmer Fredette, that's what it looks like for him. And I just hope Reed Shepherd isn't Jimmer Fredette. That's just the one guy I hope he's not in the NBA level, because I really thought he has star potential, and I still think that potential is there. He just needs to get his head in the game, because every time he's on the court, maybe it's because of the short leash he's on right now, there's not a lot of freedom, and it's really affecting his efficiency offensively.
Yeah, he's a player that has such a wide range of outcomes, because last year at Kentucky, he had a historic shooting season as a freshman. Best shooter in the draft class, arguably neck and neck with Jeremy McCain. And we saw Jeremy McCain come in and light things up as a rookie. Shepherd really had the exact opposite scenario, where in Summer League and the G League, he's had the confidence, and we've seen just how versatile a player he is. It's not just three-point shooting. He has a lightning quick mid-range release. He has that feel. He plays the right way. He's that connective kind of do-it-all guard that I kind of compare to our Fred VanVleet, who ironically is the Rockets starting point guard right now. Like you guys highlighted, sometimes for younger, smaller guards, it takes them extra time. We've seen some really ugly rookie seasons from players at his position, at his size, who have turned it around in the past.
Yep.
But I do want to turn the script. My favorite rookie right now in the NBA is Mataz Buzelis. And what he has shown for Chicago is pretty damn exciting moving forward. Coming into the draft, he was a potential number 1 overall pick before playing in the G League. And of course, last year, the team struggled and his draft stock really did fall quite a bit. And in turn, he fell right into the Bulls' laps. And they got themselves a player who has arguably the highest ceiling in this draft class. But his floor at the same time, to me, the baseline skill set defensively is really sound. So far this year, and his 15 minutes a game, he's gained a lot more playing time as of late. Opponents are shooting 10% worse at the rim when he's defending within 4 feet. That ranks in the 97th percentile. As a help defender and a wing, he's one of the most versatile players in this draft class. Per 36, averaging 2 blocks. And then on the offensive end, he has good touch. His form looks good. He's making 35% of his threes, and he can do just a little bit off the dribble, and he's a good athlete. So I really believe that Buzelis' athleticism and defensive traits give him that really high floor. And if he can find that confidence and that consistency from three-point land, you're looking at somebody who I don't think it's crazy to say plays like an Andre Karolinko. He hasn't had the greatest nickname of all time, but just like AK, he has that same skill set and that same archetype. So for Bull fans, you have to be excited. I thought it was a huge hit in the draft. And when looking at him versus Ricochet, I did like Buzelis more. And Zach, of course, went with the first overall pick to the Hawks. I've seen their vision a lot since then, but to get Mataz 10 picks later and to have him playing quite well this year is encouraging. He just needs to get better finishing through contact and playing through physicality. I mean, he's shooting like 53% at the rim this year, which is terrible. Yeah. But with his physical tools, and he's 6'10", and he can guard in so many different ways. The other rookie that Riv highlighted, everyone has to be behind him. Right now, he looks like the best player in this draft class, Stephon Castle. As a starter this year, he has been a lot more consistent, and it's been a tale of two halves. Stephon Castle's last 17 games, 17 points a game, 48% from the field, 34% from three. He's getting the foul line 4.5 times. And to have Wemby out for the season is a huge bummer, but if there's any positives that come out of it, you're going to get a better draft stock, and you're also going to have Castle playing these lower stakes games where he can develop and not have that same pressure had they have had Wemby healthy. Mm-hmm. And one more rookie, I want to have a third who kind of close this out on. I'm going to go with the first overall pick. It's not necessarily the most sexy choice. He has had a rough game a couple nights ago, went 4-15 versus the Magic in their loss. But Zachary Ricochet has looked a lot more comfortable in the second half of the year as well. He's somebody who, like Buzelis, has a very specific complementary skill set. Don't think he'll ever be a star, but over the last 15 games, shooting 44% from three-point land. Last 14, my apologies. And defensively, he can really defend well on the ball. So to see those shooting spurts last year, that's where he raised his draft stock second half of the year, shot the ball quite well, and he's doing it right now for Atlanta. So my three rookies are going to be Mataz Buzelis, Stephon Castle, and Zachary Ricochet.
I want to talk about all of your guys' picks right now because Montes Bazelis, Riv will find this funny. You know who Montes Bazelis reminds me a lot of?
Here we go. Jada McDaniels.
He does. Very similar coming in year one. You the really tall, 6'10", lengthy guy who highly explosive, comes in ahead of schedule as a weak side rim protector, showing some defense. Right, Riv? Really good touch within 18 feet, but can't really shoot threes for some reason. That's Jada McDaniels all over
Elite
the place.
player within 18 feet. That's what you tell me.
Elite player within 18 feet. If Matas figures out the rebounding like Jaden, I'm not going to go. Riv hates that conversation, but I think Matas. The funny thing is, coming into the season, he and Castle were kind of my two guys in the running for number one, and because I thought Matas was coming in as a shooter, like a Mike Dunleavy type shooter. Those were the type of comps that were coming into college and the G League, and he just hasn't shot like that. If Matas can become a better shooter and play with more strength and play a little lower to the ground off the dribble, he can be the best player in this year's draft class. It's a lot to ask of a player, but he's got a foundation defensively and athletically. Everything in offense right now is a ball of clay. He just has to kind of mold it and see how he wants to sculpt it long term. So I like that pick. And Stephon Castle, I'm just proud I had him number one on my board. Like every draft. Okay. Thank you very much. Every draft, it's easy. Like I had Cunningham number one, and I had Chet number one and 22, and Victor 23. Like those weren't very hard picks, and all of those guys at minimum have been top two players in their draft. But like it was really hard to pick a number one guy this year, and I rolled with Castle. So I'm gonna give myself a little credit there. But I'm gonna give a theme here. I'm just going to give three names in because I'm just going to continue my bias. I'm not hiding it. It's the title of the show, Objectively Biased. I just want to give shine to the Timberwolves rookie class because ever since we've been hurt, we've been very reliant on three rookies: Rob Dillingham, Terrence Shannon Jr., and Jalen Clark. Rob Dillingham, since the Utah game, has been on a slump, and like a rookie guard, he's had up and down moments, but he's really flashed. He's got a lot of long-term potential. Terrence Shannon has walked in on an NBA court and just been impactful right away. He's been ready defensively day one. Never stop motor. Really good in transition. Really good passer, which I didn't expect. And he's honestly, I think at the end of the season, I think he's going to just stay in the rotation all year with how well he's playing. And Jalen Clark has come in, and the defensive player of the year in college tears his Achilles. He's been great defensively. I mean, Malik Monk was telling Edwards, like, thank God that guy's off the court. I have no idea who he is, but damn, he can defend. He's been doing that for weeks now, and he's doing it being ahead of schedule offensively. Minnesota has three rookie players who look like rotation players in the NBA, which is really hard to find in a draft like this, and it's really good when you don't have a lot of first-round picks to go around to find three rookies who can legitimately play. Yeah. So that's
the silver lining of their season.
Yeah, it's saved our season. The fact that we can have Dante be hurt, Randall be hurt, Rudy be hurt, and still beat a team like the OKC Thunder on the backs of 2024 rookies, only one lottery pick. I mean, I just got to give them
missing two starters in that game. They weren't. That wasn't a healthy OKC team.
Yeah, it was. Chet was playing, J-Dub was playing, Che was playing.
Who were they missing in that matchup the first time?
No, I'm saying last game, right before the All-Star break.
Last game.
They're fully healthy.
They were. They were healthy.
Am I tripping? Oh, I'm tripping. The T-Wolves were not healthy.
Yes.
But in my mind, I thought in my mind, I thought Chet was out, and then I thought they were missing one more starter.
No, brother. OKC just got locked up. That was just it, bro. Yeah, no, I'm with you though. Stephon Castle, big fan of him. I'll never forget my draft pick when I had the draft world in uproar when I thought Josh should have went number one over Zion, man. Like that year was a tough year, man, because people just thought Zion to be the truth, and I was like, nah, man, 12. He's the guy. He's the truth. So I know what it feels like to feel vindicated, to feel like your guy is doing something, and it's really making you feel like you made the right choice. I think Stephon Castle, I was big on him too last offseason. He's going to be a phenomenal player. He just does all the little things you want in a quality top pick. Like he's just a scrappy dude, and he was able to play at UConn, play under a championship winner like Dan Hurley, and just been a constant guy for them, a jack of all trades. So anybody who didn't see the work ethic and the fact that he'll be able to benefit a team, you missed. You fucked up.
You know what my comp for Castle is right now?
Jimmy Butler.
Jimmy Butler. I think the best version of Stephon Castle is one of those can have a Jimmy Butler type impact
Yeah,
and
he's
kind of
screaming.
do everything from an intangible defensive perspective. And if you need him to give you 22, he will. I think that's the type of impact Castle can have in the NBA, and that's a great third option behind obviously De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama.
Do you think
So
that from a how far off from Jimmy is he from an archetype standpoint? Because he's more of a true point guard.
I think he's scaled down like the guard version of Jimmy because I think Jimmy's more of a true wing,
Yeah.
whereas I think
That's what I'm-
Castle's kind of 1 to 3, where Jimmy plays more 2 to 4. Would you agree with that, Riv?
Jimmy used to play the 2 when
Yeah.
he was in Chicago. It was him and Luol Deng. Yeah, Jimmy's more of a because he's bigger. You know, he's bigger, he's physical. But I can see Castle scaling to play the 4. Like I can see it, like legitimately. If a team, depending because Wemby's 7'6", dude, 7'5". So I can see Castle, but I agree. I think Castle is more of a 1 to 3, while Jimmy is a 2 to 4. Really, honestly, a 3-4 first, then a 2. And I think that's more. Jimmy hasn't played the 2 since Minnesota, I believe, or even then, he still probably played the 3, but because it was him, Wiggs, Cat, and who else? Who else did you guys have?
They
that
had
the
Taj
Wolves team
Gibson and Jeff
The
Teague,
Timberwolves team. Yeah, it was Teague.
Yeah,
Derrick Rose.
I don't think D Rose started though.
D Rose came. What did he come in that first year? I don't think he and Butler
It was
ever
the second
played
year.
together. Yeah,
And that-
it was
He was a
Teague.
2018.
It was
19 guy.
gosh, Nemanja Bjelica, Gorgie Jang,
Yep, I remember that.
Tyus Jones.
Ty Jones was on that team.
Jamal
Yeah,
Crawford.
They also
Jamal-
have the Jamal Crawford overlap.
Yeah, they played together.
Wow.
Actually, it was literally like Butler. I remember when the team had beef. It was Butler, Teague, and Crawford kind of in one corner, and then the kids in the other corner.
D Rose was kind of the guy sitting there like, I'll watch you guys. I'm gonna let the old heads and the young heads duke it out.
They never overlapped. Butler and Rose on the Wolves, I don't believe.
No, they did.
They did?
Butler was there when D Rose had the 50 ball.
Was he on the team? Okay, he was there for like 10 games then, because Butler. Because I was at that Rose game. Butler didn't play that game.
Yeah, no, they were there. They may not have played a lot together, but they overlapped.
Okay. They might have played a couple games because Butler got traded like 10 games into the season, and they got Rose early. And funny story, I remember that season. That was like my first year kind of having like partial season tickets. And I just had beef with everybody. I was like that chubby 14-year-old kid who just didn't shut my mouth. And because nobody was at the games, they could just hear what I said. So I had beef. But you guys remember Milos Teodosic?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
one of the
I was a
craftiest
big-
bastards of all time.
sure.
I loved Milos Teodosic coming in, which is ironic because he kind of wanted to fight me after a game. And all I said, so he got in a fight with Kat. And I said something stupid. It was like, Kat would whoop your little, European butt. It was something like that. I was like 14. And he looks at me. And then I just look at him back. And then he turns around. And he looks at me again. He gives me a bigger glare. And then I just start laughing. And then the rest of the game, he has something to say. He looks at me. He points at me. And then at the end of the game, I keep looking at him, kind of mocking him. And then I see Milos, and he goes to DeAndre Jordan. He taps DeAndre's shoulder and points at me. DeAndre Jordan in his prime. And I'm just like, and then DeAndre Jordan looks at Milos Teodosic like, the heck's wrong with you, man? And he just starts laughing. And he just looks at me and smiles. So that was funny. And also Jamal Crawford, I remember screaming at him when we lost to the Grizzlies when they stunk. And I just kept yelling, 14 years! Because that was the last time we made the playoffs. Like, I have some terrible stories from that Jimmy Butler season. It was not a healthy season. It was very toxic.
Sounds like a perfect way to encapsulate Wolves fandom.
Yeah. It makes you really I think being a fan of a Minnesota team is like going to be good for marriage because I can handle toxicity, I think
That's one way to look at it.
I'm not going to assume my marriage is going to be toxic, but I know I can handle conflict because I know the Timberwolves have shown me something worse. So that's all. But I think that's a good way to end the show. What do you guys think?
And
Sure,
that's
for
what
sure.
to say.
All right. Well, that is the end of episode 16 of Objectively Biased, aka Wolves Therapy. We will see you guys next week, and we super appreciate you watching.